Okay, so welcome to Seattle Atheist Church. Welcome, atheists, agnostics, rationalists, naturalistic scientists, naturalistic philosophers, secular humanists, spiritual humanists. All of these names really mean the same thing, which is atheist. And I know you're thinking, except for agnostic, and hello agnostics. Really, I know that you really think a little bit more about it. You want to call yourself an atheist too. So the reason that we use the word atheist at Seattle Atheist Church is because we are atheists. It's a specific way of looking at the world. An atheist church is not a church without religion, without dogma. Atheist church is a church built on the ideals and values of atheism. I want everyone here, to get yourself a notebook, and we want to start thinking about how we think as well as what we think. How do you ask questions? And do you check for the assumptions behind those questions? Do you look for your own biases? Do you stop and think about what would be the logical conclusion if I had that thought and I followed that thought through? So we want you to start doing journal writing as a good way to kind of get to know yourself and what you think. Can I see a show of hands? How uncomfortable are you with the word atheist? How uncomfortable are you with the word atheist with a show of fingers? Okay, so whatever number you held up, that's your number. And I encourage you and challenge you to tell that many people that you are an atheist this week. Seriously, you don't need to tell anyone that that it's not safe to tell, but we do want you to start getting used to and comfortable with the word atheist. Let me tell you my own story. And everybody has their own story. In fact, here at Seattle Atheist Church, we have members who have been part of the Seattle Atheist or Free Thought or UU or whatever community for many generations. Seattle is a very safe place to be an atheist. And if you didn't know that, we welcome you to come to Seattle Atheist Church and start getting to know more atheists. But I didn't know it. So let me tell you my story. About 20 years ago, I was at work and I was sitting in a lunchroom, and I was not here in Seattle at that point in my life. And a man came in and sat down beside me, a coworker sat down beside me, and he told me that his son is a homosexual and is dying of AIDS. But it was what he said next that shocked me. He told me that he was happy about this because God punishes sin. Now, at the time, I was a Christian, and my response to him was, I will pray for you. About 15 years later, I had another conversation with a new friend who told me that, God loves to punish sin. And at this point in my life, I had matured somewhat in my thinking, and I said to her, hey, ideas have consequences. So we began to argue back and forth, Bible verse for Bible verse. And one night, I'm sitting in my chair at home with my Bible, and I formulated a question. And I began, thinking about my thinking because I wanted to be a better thinker. And the question that I formulated was, am I really trying to argue that Paul, a person who's been dead for almost 2,000 years, wasn't homophobic? Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. But what does it matter? What are the assumptions required for that to be relevant? And as I looked at the assumptions behind that, the whole thing unraveled. And I basically realized at that point that I was an atheist. but I was not comfortable yet calling myself an atheist. Later on, and at that time, it was interesting because what I really felt was a deep sense of loss. A deep sense of loss and some sadness. It was like I was a small child and someone had informed me that my invisible friend wasn't real. Adam Savage, who is one of the guys on Mythbusters, the redheaded guy on Mythbusters, purportedly said something similar to that. He said, after much careful observation and empirical thinking, I came to realize that there was somebody who cared a lot about me, who knew what I was thinking, who kept track of what I said and did, and who pushed me to do more than I thought I was capable of. And after a lot of thinking, I realized that that person keeping score was me. So that was the experience that I had. And at first I sort of felt a sense of loss, but then it began a journey of self-discovery. Okay, so, and years later, when I did decide to start calling myself an atheist, my emotions really surprised me again, because I felt sheer, undiluted terror. I realized that I wasn't afraid that there was some supernatural being that was going to send a lightning bolt and strike me down, but what I was afraid of was other people. So one of the questions, other people and all kinds of other peoples, I was even afraid of atheists, really. And so one of the questions that I'd like you to use as a journal prompt is, what do you think other atheists are like? I've talked about this with a lot of people. Do you think that they're all men? Do you think that they're all young? Do you think, what do you think atheists are like? Because whatever you think atheists are like probably says more about you and than the actual atheist community. You'll be really surprised to have your biases challenged if you show up to any atheist events. What I thought atheists were like is that I thought atheists were very logical, but in a way that would be legalistic, dull, and tedious. And what I actually found is that the atheist community has some of the most thoughtful, compassionate, and creative people that I've ever met in it. They do have a common characteristic, and that is the willingness to think in a disciplined manner. And we need a lot more of that. We need a lot more of that. So here in Seattle, a lot of fundamentalists are growing by teaching small children or they're growing their churches, whatever their organizations, by teaching small children to proselytize to other children. And so children as young as 5 are learning to, talk to other children about their faith. And this is kind of a problem from the point of view that most children have not yet developed critical thinking skills. And nor should they, because early childhood especially should be a time of great magical thinking and developing our imaginations. My own children, over about a 9-month period before I was out as an atheist, over a 9-month period I had them asked 5 different times by children if they were going to be going to hell, or told that they were going to be going to hell. Luckily for me, my children's response to this was, dude, do you even know how crazy you sound right now? And so on May 7th, we have a National Day of Reason. So many atheists are petitioning President Barack Obama to make May 7th a National Day of Reason, and we support that effort. And we're just going to get together and have a social time, be Thursday night from like 6 to 8. We're going to have some food. But in thinking about getting ready for the National Day of Reason, what we request you do is to start journaling about what are the areas in my life where I feel that I don't have enough information to make clear decisions? So one of the things that happened, this is the last story, but one of the things that happened to me over the summer is that I was traveling to Portland, Oregon, and Carrie Underwood's song, Jesus Take the Wheel, came on the radio. So if you're not familiar with this song, it's about a young mom, a young mother who has her baby in the back seat. She's driving one night and she hits a patch of black ice. Her response to this is to throw her arms up in the air and say, Jesus, take the wheel. Now I couldn't believe my ears when I heard this song, and I talked to a lot of my friends about, have you heard this song? What do you think of the song? And what people said to me is, it's just a metaphor, Ruth. It's just a metaphor. And, the road is the road of life, and the ice is a bad patch, and all. I'm like, saying that it's a metaphor does not make it any more reasonable. In fact, as a metaphor, that is really the issue, that we don't take responsibility for knowing what we need to know. We don't take responsibility for making the decisions that we need to make. And we don't take responsibility for the outcomes that those decisions or the lack of making those decisions, incur. So what I would like to say is this. The antidote to fundamentalism is not an absence of dogma. The antidote to fundamentalism is reason, okay? If you are an atheist church, then there are specific values that atheists hold, and one of them is the value of critical thinking and reason. The way that one should deal with black ice for entertainment purposes is this. First, know what black ice is. It's when the rain is falling, it's 32 degrees below or less, and the water freezes when it hits the ground. So if you hear a weather report that says there's going to be freezing rains, that's part of what that means, so please stay home. Black ice can be found on top of bridges or inside of tunnels, usually early morning or late at night, but it can be found at any time. And if you see a car in front of you start to swerve, that can be a sign that there's black ice. Don't take your hands off the wheel. Do take your foot off the accelerator to give yourself a chance to slow down. Resist the urge to hit the brake or to jerk the wheel if you start to kind of spin. And I would like to just close. We close our talk portion of the service in the same way every time, and so I will say our closing reading. Atheists believe in good because good works in non-mysterious ways. Thank you very much for coming.